Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at the 5 worst nations of 2022, and by worst we mean the teams that should have performed a hell of a lot better than they did. Here we go. Number 1, England. Oh yes, we're starting a bit controversial and I love it. Yes, I've gone for England as my first choice and let me tell you why. First of all, I truly believe that England have the best squad of pretty much any national team, probably on par with France. And it's only because of that reason that I can't see 2022 as anything other than disappointing. I mean, England's road to the World Cup was absolutely dreadful. They finished bottom of the Nations League group, suffering back-to-back losses to Hungary, including our worst home defeat in 94 years when they thrashed us 4-0 at Molineux. And as always, England failed to beat any of the big nations that we faced, including 2 draws to Germany, a loss to Italy, and of course a loss to France in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Yes, there were some big scorelines in the World Cup, and England did play some nice attacking football at times, but against Iran, against Wales, it's about the games against the likes of France where England let themselves down once again, and they need to start winning these games. This is a golden generation for England, and if they can't find a way to beat the big teams, they are going to end up trophyless, which is going to be a real shame. Speaking of golden generations. Number 2, Belgium. Belgium were utterly hopeless in the World Cup. They did get off to a winning start against Canada, beating them 1-0, but if you remember that game, they didn't really show any great quality, and it was Canada who were arguably the better team. Morocco ended up beating them quite comfortably 2-0, meaning they had the difficult task in their last game of having to beat Croatia, who'd already picked up 4 points. My biggest takeaway from that game was Lukaku. He came on as a substitute at half time, and he should have had about 3 hat-tricks. I mean, his finishing was woeful. But despite everything, Belgium couldn't score, and they went crashing out at the group stage. De Bruyne publicly criticised the squad for being too old, leading to rumours about player fallouts, including some violent dressing room altercations. It's a truly disappointing end for this golden generation for Belgium. I think what they need to do now is focus on some of the younger players that they've got coming through, try and rebuild that squad, and let's see what they can do at Euro 2024. Number 3, Algeria. Going into 2022, Algeria were ranked 29th in the FIFA World Ranking. And the reason they were that high was because they hadn't lost a game since October 2018, a really impressive feat for Algeria. But then came 2022. If you're an Algeria fan, the 2 most important things are A, the World Cup, and B, the AFCON, which were both coming up in 2022. In January, they were definitely one of the favourites going into the AFCON, and they had a fairly comfortable group with Sierra Leone, Equatorial Guinea and Ivory Coast. However, they finished bottom of the group, drawing 0-0 with Sierra Leone and losing to both Equatorial Guinea and Ivory Coast. Oh well, they still have the World Cup to look forward to. Nope. They lost the World Cup qualifier to Cameroon on away goals as well. They were unbeaten for over 3 years. That is a real kick in the teeth. Number 4, Qatar. Yes, I'm including the World Cup hosts on this list, and I'll tell you why. They had the oddest preparation I think I've ever seen to any World Cup. Taking on all comers, they lost to Linfield of the Northern Irish League 1-0 before playing against a mixed bag of youth and squad players, all European teams such as Antwerp, Mallorca, Lazio. They even played against 2 teams from the 2nd and 5th tier of the Slovakian Football League. And yes, they may have won some of those games, but so? In October, they played against some of the lowest ranked football nations such as Guatemala and Nicaragua. And sure, they won them all, but again, who cares? It just isn't decent enough preparation for the World Cup. Evidently, because the other reason why they're on this list is because they hosted the World Cup and they lost all their group games, becoming the only World Cup host to lose their first match and not win a single game. Maybe this one is a little bit harsh because Qatar hosted a really good World Cup, and even though they played a lot of rubbish teams, you can only beat what's put in front of you. However, I was expecting more. Number 5, Germany. Right, let's get one thing straight here. The belief that Germany do not have a world-class team is an absolute myth. Their team is made up of Champions League and domestic league winners such as Kai Havertz, Joshua Kimmich, Manuel Neuer, Serge Gnabry, Antonio Rudiger. I mean, the list just goes on. So to say they were not contenders to win the World Cup is ridiculous in my opinion. They are not a poor team playing to their standard. They are a world-class team who are majorly underperforming. Aside from losing to Japan and not making it out of their group at the World Cup, the rest of 22 was made up of mostly draws. To me, they just don't seem to manage games well. For example, they were 2-0 up against England with 20 minutes to go and ended up finding themselves 3-2 down before claiming a very fortunate equaliser in the 87th minute. Another example is the Japan game in the World Cup. They were 1-0 up, and to me they just became very lazy and slow in their build-up, and it allowed Japan to get back in the game. If they had just increased their intensity, they would have surely found a second goal and saw that game out. A glass half full person might look at those results and say, well, at least Germany are hard to beat, but in reality they're not clinical enough, they're poor in possession, they don't defend well enough and concede too many goals. It was a really poor year for Germany and they should be doing a hell of a lot better. And there you have it, my 5 worst nations of 2022. Let me know if you agree. Let me know who you would have as your worst nations. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll speak to you shortly.